Hello, friends. This is Confessions with Amy. Here we share new confessions every day.
They didn't even say thank you. That's what stuck with me most. Not the severance. Not the cheap paperwork. Not even the arrogant smirk on Brooks Maddox's face as he slid that folder across the desk. No. It was the silence. The absence. The complete erasure of everything I'd given to that place. It was as if I had never been there. For 32 years, I showed up. Not just physically, I showed up. I was 23 when Haver and Keene first hired me as an admin assistant in their Pittsburgh branch. It was spring of '93, and I still remember what I wore to the interview, a gray suit from Marshall's that I'd ironed 5 times just to get the collar sharp enough. My heels were too tight and my resume was only 1 page, but I was determined to walk out of that building with a job. Back then, the company was still family-owned. Messy, understaffed, chaotic, but hungry. I liked that. I could tell they needed someone like me, someone who didn't flinch at pressure, who learned fast and asked smart questions. I moved up quickly. Office manager by '96. Compliance associate by 2000. By 2010, I was leading process integration for all East Coast branches. I trained every new regional analyst myself. My name wasn't on the building, but without me, it would have collapsed by 2005. I worked through pneumonia once. Didn't take a sick day until 2017, and even that was because my appendix nearly ruptured. I mediated office disputes, smoothed over HR nightmares, caught errors in audit reports that saved us from federal fines. But I didn't brag about it. That wasn't my style. I believed in being indispensable quietly. The people changed, of course. The company got acquired. Then merged. Then restructured. The old guard retired. The new faces got younger, slicker, more obsessed with LinkedIn endorsements than actual work. And then came Brooks Maddox. He was a golden boy. Tall, charming, MBA from Stanford. His suit probably cost more than my first car. He didn't understand our business, but he knew how to use words like synergy and efficiency realignment in sentences that impressed shareholders. When he came in as CEO, I didn't panic. I'd seen his type before. They usually flared up bright and burned out fast. I kept my head down, did my job. I even helped cover for him when his initial numbers tanked. But it turned out he didn't want help. He wanted obedience. The warning signs came in quietly: sudden staff cuts, confidential budget reviews, meetings I was excluded from. I started hearing murmurs about flattening overhead, phasing out legacy roles, reinvesting in talent acceleration. I wasn't stupid. I knew what that meant. I just didn't think they'd come for me. Not 4 days before my retirement. 4 days. That Monday morning started like any other. I was in by 7:45, coffee in hand, already sorting through weekend backlog. I had a wrap-up call at 9, a policy audit at 11, and a retirement luncheon being planned for Friday by Sandra from accounting. Then Erin Cross showed up at my door. Erin was young, maybe 29. Bright, nervous, always too eager. She'd been hired as our new HR director 6 months ago. "Marlene," she said, hovering awkwardly in the doorway. "Brooks wants to see you." In his office. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. That was my first real clue. I stood, smoothed my blazer, deep plum, silk-lined, and followed her. The hallway felt longer than usual. I passed team photos from years past, faces I'd hired, mentored, said goodbye to. People who sent me Christmas cards long after they'd left. Brooks was already seated when I entered. He didn't get up. "Morning, Marlene," he said. "Thanks for coming." I nodded, sat down. There was a folder on the desk. My name on the label. "Let me just get right to it," he said, opening the folder like a waiter presenting a check. "We've been undergoing some restructuring. Budget's tight. We've had to make difficult decisions. Unfortunately, your role is being phased out. My hands went cold. But I kept my face still. Phased out, I repeated, calmly. I retire on Friday. He cleared his throat, already looking back down. Yes, but due to a change in our seniority clause, technically your retirement isn't considered finalized until the separation agreement is signed. If you sign today, we can expedite a modest severance, 2 weeks. After that, unfortunately, there's no offer on the table. 2 weeks. No pension. No bonus. No plaque. No recognition for 32 years of work. I stared at him for a long moment. Not out of confusion, but control. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me angry or broken. This was prepared in advance, I said quietly. Wasn't it? Legal requires us to. Don't, I cut in, not sharply, but firmly. Don't lie to me, Brooks. He paused. Smiled. The fake kind. I know this is tough, Marlene. But it's business. Nothing personal. I reached out and closed the folder. Gently. You're wrong, I said. It's very personal. You just don't know how yet. I stood. Erin looked like she wanted to disappear. You'll need to sign that by 5 p.m., Brooks called after me. Or it's void. Understood. I walked out. My heels clicked against the tile like clockwork. Past the conference rooms. Past the interns who still smiled at me in the hallway. Past the fake plants in the lobby that I used to water until someone told me they were plastic. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. But when I got home, I sat at my kitchen table for exactly 4 minutes in silence. Then I reached for my phone. I only made one call. Hey, Aunt, I said when he picked up. I need to talk to you about something. It's going to get ugly. Anthony Bellamy had been my friend for over 20 years. And he just happened to be a bulldog of a labor attorney who hated corporate bullies. And in that moment, I knew, I wasn't going down quiet. They thought they were ending something. But they'd just started a war. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was anxious, no, that feeling had burned itself out by midnight, but because my mind wouldn't stop doing what it had done for the last 3 decades, analyzing risk. What documents had I signed? What policies had they changed without notifying me? What language had they used in the handbook revisions 2 years ago? I knew that company better than I knew my own handwriting. And somewhere in the bone marrow of my intuition, I could feel it, they'd gotten sloppy. But still, I needed help. Not just help, a weapon. So I called Anthony Bellamy. I'd met Ant in 2001 when I was coordinating compliance workshops for our DC office. Back then, he was a cocky, infuriatingly brilliant labor attorney who chain-smoked cloves and quoted the Constitution for fun. We'd argued over severance clauses for nearly 3 hours in a sweaty conference room, then grabbed drinks and laughed about it like old friends. We'd stayed in touch ever since. When he picked up the phone Sunday night, I didn't waste time. Ant. It's Marlene. He paused for maybe half a second. Talk to me. I told him everything, the meeting, the folder, the severance ultimatum. I told him how they'd waited until the very last week, how they dangled my pension over a cliff and dared me to beg for scraps. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was a long silence. They think you'll go quietly, he said finally. You're too close to retirement, too proud, too tired to fight. That's what they're betting on. They bet wrong. Damn right they did. We agreed to meet the next morning. I didn't go into the office. I emailed Erin at 6:42 a.m. sharp. Per legal advice, I am taking administrative leave effective immediately. All communications should be routed through counsel. Thank you. She didn't reply. Instead, at 10:17 a.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring out. A voicemail followed, stiff, clipped, corporate. "Hi Marlene, this is Brooks. Got your note. Sorry to hear that. We'd love to resolve this amicably. Please give me a call at your earliest convenience." He sounded nervous. Good. By noon, I was in Anthony's downtown Baltimore office, sitting across from his desk as he scribbled furiously on a legal pad. His walls were lined with casebooks, framed verdicts, and a photo of Ruth Bader Ginsburg with a sticky note that read, "What would RBG do?" "They didn't give you anything in writing prior to the meeting?" "Not a word." "Perfect. That's retaliation dressed up as realignment. Classic strategy. They're betting the payout of a lawsuit would cost them less than your full retirement benefits." "Then they haven't done the math," I said. "They're about to wish they'd just bought me that stupid plaque." Anthony grinned. "Let's take inventory." We went through everything: my employee file, saved emails, HR policy updates, even memos from the 2019 Benefits Committee. I still had most of them archived on my personal drive. Decades of precise, paper-clipped diligence. Because while they'd spent their time making spreadsheets look impressive, I'd been building a record. By the end of the meeting, Anthony leaned back in his chair, visibly impressed. "You know what you've got here, right?" "What?" "A goddamn time bomb." I went home that evening not angry, but activated. I felt the way I used to feel before big audits or investor inspections: clear, sharp, cold in all the right places. Brooks wanted me to break. That's what these people always want. They push you to the edge, wait for you to make a scene, then call you unstable, emotional, a disruption. But I wasn't giving him that satisfaction. Instead, I started organizing. I reached out to former employees, people who had been quietly pushed out in the last 18 months. Analysts, project leads, even a janitorial supervisor named Hector who had been with us for 25 years before they suddenly eliminated his role. I didn't ask them to testify. I just asked them to talk. And oh, did they talk. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd been strong-armed into silence. Turns out Haver and Keene had been restructuring their payroll with surgical cruelty, targeting veterans with legacy contracts, replacing them with lower-paid hires under development programs. They thought they'd get away with it because we were all too tired, too old, or too scared to fight back. They were wrong on all counts. At 7:48 p.m., I received another voicemail. This one from Aaron. "Hi, Marlene. I hope you're okay. I just wanted to say that I really respect you. I'm sorry for how things were handled. I didn't have a choice. I played it twice. Then I saved it." "Didn't have a choice" was code for she knew. Maybe not everything. But enough. Enough to feel guilty. Enough to flip, if necessary. It was almost sweet. Almost. But I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was preparing for war. There's a moment, right before a storm breaks, when the air goes still. You know it's coming. You can smell the shift. But everything's just waiting. That's where I was. Right there in the quiet. But I wasn't paralyzed. I was preparing. Anthony called me Tuesday morning. "You were right," he said. "There's a clause in the Employee Retirement Protocol from 2011, states that any employee with 30-plus years tenure who enters voluntary retirement is entitled to full benefits, including pension, bonus, and accrued leave payouts. And they tried to terminate me 4 days before that kicked in." Exactly. Which makes it a timing strategy, one that could be considered both retaliatory and fraudulent under Maryland labor law. "You think we can win?" "Marlene. You already have everything we need. Now we just decide how we want to win." I leaned back in my kitchen chair, the same one I'd sat in for 27 straight tax seasons, doing after-hours budget cleanup for that company. And I smiled. "We do it my way," I said. "Which is? We make them come to me." Tuesday afternoon, I drafted an email. Not angry. Not threatening. Surgical. I addressed it to Brooks, CC'd Aaron, and BCC'd Anthony, of course. Subject: Formal Notice of Legal Counsel Representation. Dear Brooks. Effective immediately, all communications regarding my employment status, separation, or retirement agreement should be directed to my attorney, Anthony Bellamy, ESQ. We are currently reviewing company policy materials and relevant Maryland employment statutes. Please consider this a preservation notice for all internal communications involving my file, role restructuring, and termination proceedings. Best. Marlene Voss. By 4 p.m., Aaron had replied, now fully drenched in legal language. We acknowledge receipt of your message and will comply with legal counsel engagement protocols. Pending internal review, further discussions will proceed through proper channels. Translated? They were panicking. Which meant pressure was working. But I wasn't done. That evening, I called Hector Ruiz, the janitorial supervisor I'd spoken to the night before. We'd always been friendly, but never close. Still, when I asked if we could meet for coffee, he didn't hesitate. We met at a quiet little diner on York Road. I bought us both lemon meringue pie. We talked like old colleagues. And then I got to the point. Do you remember the day they let you go? I asked. Of course I do, he said. April 12th. They told me my department was being outsourced. Said it was a logistical necessity. Did you sign anything? Just the severance packet. I didn't know I had another option. What if I told you weren't the only one? His face tightened. I'd believe it. I showed him my paperwork. I showed him the pattern. We compared dates, policies, language. The pieces started lining up like chessmen. The same phrases. The same sudden meetings. The same trick, push out the legacy employees before their benefits vest. They're stealing from us, I said. Quietly. Legally, until someone calls them on it. Hector leaned forward. You want to sue? Eventually. But first. I want to apply pressure. Over the next 2 days, I worked the phones like I was assembling a task force. I reached out to everyone I trusted, former employees, assistants, even a retired VP named Laurel Kincaid who now grew orchids in North Carolina. I didn't ask them to join a class action lawsuit, not yet. I asked them for documentation. Memos. Notes. Schedules. Anything. Most of them were eager to help. Some had already suspected what I now confirmed. All of them were angry. Laurel sent me a PDF she'd kept, just in case, an old internal memo from 2020 where an executive had proposed strategically minimizing long-term liabilities via incentivized early exits for retirement-tier staff. Brooks had been CC'd. That was leverage. By Thursday morning, the day before my retirement was supposed to be official, Anthony filed a formal complaint to Haver and Keene's legal team. It was clean, bulletproof, and laced with just enough threat to keep them sweating. Included was a demand for full reinstatement of all retirement benefits per original contract. Retroactive compensation of pension triggers. A non-disclosure clause in my favor, not theirs. And a clear warning that we were exploring all public legal avenues in the event of continued non-compliance. By 3 p.m., Brooks called. I didn't answer. He emailed. Vague and careful. Marlene, we'd love to discuss a resolution that reflects your years of valued service. Would you be open to a conversation? I forwarded it to Anthony. He replied on my behalf. Our client is amenable to discussion. But the window for a quiet resolution is closing rapidly. We waited. No response for hours. Then, at 6:12 p.m., Erin called. This time, I did pick up. Her voice was tight. Cautious. Marlene. Just wanted to let you know, we're drafting a revised agreement. Full pension, bonus package, plus additional discretionary compensation. Brooks is open to signing it by tomorrow morning. Good, I said. He should be. For what it's worth, she said quietly, you weren't wrong. I know. You really scared him, you know that? No, I said. I reminded him who he was dealing with. By midnight, I had the final draft in my inbox. Every dollar. Every clause. Every line of dignity they tried to erase. Friday morning, I walked into that building, not as a desperate woman clinging to a job, but as someone who had beaten them at their own game. I didn't sign their original termination form. They signed mine. I could have left quietly. I had what I wanted, the pension, the bonus, the apology letter drafted by someone in legal who probably needed a drink after writing it. Anthony said we could wrap things up, let it go, chalk it up as a win. But I wasn't interested in a quiet win. Quiet is how they get away with it. Quiet is how they erase you. No. If I was leaving a message behind. I arrived Friday morning wearing the same navy wool blazer I wore to my interview in 1993. Still fit. Still sharp. The receptionist, a sweet intern named Cody, smiled nervously when he saw me. Morning, Ms. Voss. Morning, Cody. I'm just here to finish what I started. Brooks wasn't in yet. Of course he wasn't. Men like him rarely show up early unless there's a photographer involved. But Erin was. She met me at the door to HR with that professional smile HR people wear like armor. Everything's in the packet, she said. You can review in the conference room. We also brought in someone from legal, if I won't need them. I opened the envelope. The ink was fresh. My pension, untouched. My bonus, itemized. A separate payment labeled discretionary compensation, hush money, essentially. I had them. Fully. Legally. And yet, something still simmered in my chest like an unfinished sentence. I signed. Slowly. Carefully. Then stood and looked Erin straight in the eyes. You've got 5 more years here, tops, I said quietly. They'll come for you eventually. Just like they came for me. Smile all you want, but start saving now. Her face flickered. That mask of corporate neutrality wobbled, just for a second. I know, she whispered. I didn't go home. I went to the 11th floor, the heart of operations. My floor. The one I helped design when we moved into this building in 2012. Everything, the traffic flow, the print stations, the conference room's soundproofing, had my fingerprints on it. There were maybe 30 people working when I arrived. Phones ringing. Slack messages popping. Nobody looked up. I walked straight to my office. Still had my nameplate. Still smelled like eucalyptus and toner. A few happy retirement cards waited on my desk, none from the executive team. But 3 from interns. One from Sandra in accounting with a little hand-drawn cartoon of me holding a sword. It made me laugh. God, I loved her. I slid the cards into my bag and sat down at my desk one last time. Then I opened my computer. I didn't send out a mass email. That's too easy to delete. Too easy to ignore. Instead, I drafted a memo. Internal. Unavoidable. Directed to the full management staff across all East Coast branches. I knew exactly which distribution list to use, I'd created it. The subject line was simple. On legacy, and the cost of silence. I wrote. After 32 years at Haver and Keene, I retire today. I leave with full benefits, clarity, and no regrets. But I do not leave quietly. In the last 18 months, this company has engaged in targeted removals of senior staff through timing tactics designed to deny full retirement compensation. These actions have been carefully orchestrated, legally dubious, and morally bankrupt. I was one of those targets. I chose not to accept the silence they offered me. And I am not the only one. I leave you all with this. The system protects itself, until someone documents everything. Choose your exits carefully. Choose your loyalties more carefully. And if they ever come for you, don't whisper. Sincerely, Marlene Voss. East Coast Compliance Operations, 1993 to 2025. I clicked send. Then I stood up, took one last look around the office, and walked out. No applause. No send-off party. Just me, on my own terms. By the time I reached the elevator, I had 3 texts. One from Sandra. Did you send that? One from Hector. You're a legend. And one from Anthony. Just got a call from their general counsel. You scared the hell out of them. Nicely done. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I stepped into the elevator, looked at my reflection in the polished metal door, and smiled, not because I'd won, but because I'd finished. Peace doesn't come all at once. It doesn't arrive like a parade. It shows up quietly, like morning light creeping across the floor. You don't even realize it's there until you look around and notice that for the first time in months, maybe years, you're breathing without tension. 3 weeks after I walked out of Haver and Keene, I slept past 6 a.m. for the first time in over 2 decades. There was no alarm. No inbox. No white noise of guilt reminding me that somewhere, something needed fixing. I sat on the back porch of my little row house in Hampton, wrapped in a thick cotton robe, drinking black tea from a chipped mug I refused to throw out. The birds were loud. The neighborhood was slow. And for once, I wasn't thinking about quarterly reports or pending audits or what Brooks Maddox was up to. I was thinking about tomatoes. The heirlooms I'd planted. The ones starting to sprout. Imagine that, I thought, something actually growing on schedule. The week after I sent the memo, it made the rounds. People forwarded it. Screenshotted it. I know because 2 former directors texted me, both with variations of, "Wish I'd had the guts to do what you did." Even Erin, bless her anxious little heart, sent me a single-line email. "You were right. I'm looking for something new. She'll be fine. She's smart. She just needed to see that compliance and complicity aren't synonyms." Brooks never contacted me again. He probably thought ignoring me would restore his power. But that's the thing about men like him, they still believe silence is strength. It isn't. Not when the silence is theirs. Anthony and I had one final meeting, just to make sure everything had cleared. It had. Every dollar, every clause, notarized and filed. "You know," he said, looking over the final paperwork, "most people wouldn't have pulled this off." "I'm not most people." He smiled, shook his head. "You really walked into a machine and reprogrammed it from the inside." "I was the machine," I corrected. "They just forgot who built it." We toasted with cheap bourbon and promised to meet again, but not over lawsuits. My days are quiet now, but not empty. I read more. I bake. I call people I used to cancel on. I joined a small nonprofit board focused on labor rights for aging workers, ironic, maybe, but also perfect. I tell my story only when it's asked for, and only to those who'll use it. The point was never revenge. The point was never even justice. The point was remembrance. I refuse to be erased. Haver and Keene still exists, I'm sure. They'll spin my exit however they want. Maybe they'll call it an internal disagreement. Maybe they'll pretend I left quietly, respectfully, like a good little cog. Let them. Because everyone who matters now knows the truth. Last week, Sandra sent me a photo. It was a shot of my old office door, now occupied by some junior exec with a forced smile and a standing desk. Taped to the glass was a yellow sticky note. In Sandra's handwriting, it read, "Don't whisper." It made me laugh out loud. Not because it was rebellious, but because it was remembered. You see, people like Brooks thought I was just a paper pusher with a retirement date. What they didn't know was that I was the kind of woman who doesn't ask for peace. She builds it herself.